Je suis très heureux d'animer ce panel parce que nous avons avec nous une grosse exclusivité. Nous avons les principaux protagonistes de The Comey Rule. The Comey Rule, c'est la mini-série événement de la rentrée aux États-Unis qui sera diffusée sur CANAL+ en octobre, le 29 octobre, juste avant les élections aux États-Unis. C'est une série importante et j'ai avec moi, j'en suis très heureux, l'acteur principal de la série, Jeff Daniel, et son créateur, Billy Ray. Ils sont avec moi. On va passer à l'anglais maintenant, c'est sous-titré, donc rassurez-vous. Jeff, Billy, thank you so much for being here with us. Before we start the panel itself, would you please maybe, Billy, tell us about what was the story, and Jeff, tell us about the character. Who was Jim Comey?
James Comey was the director of the FBI in 2015, when the FBI was required to investigate former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and some controversies having to do with emails that she sent while Secretary of State. But at the same time, the FBI was also investigating what became very clear was Russian infiltration into the American election. These two investigations were happening simultaneously. They led Comey to be backed into a corner where he had to make some very, very tough decisions about what the FBI was going to pursue and what the FBI was going to tell the world that it was pursuing. And those decisions absolutely had an impact on the 2016 election, the result of which was Donald Trump becoming president of the United States, at which point James Comey had a whole new problem to deal with, which was a fairly lawless president. And the series endeavors to tell the story of Comey during that 2016 election, what the Russians were doing, and what the results of it were.
Jeff, maybe a word about Comey himself?
Up until that point, he had been apolitical, and that was not an unusual thing to be in his world. And then he got yanked into the political divide that is America today. And part of his struggle was the struggle to maintain that apolitical stance, not to go left or right, but to make decisions based on things like truth, justice, and the rule of law, which are apolitical targets. And that was a struggle. That was one of the things I learned playing him.
Okay, now that we know a little bit more about who was Jim Comey, let's watch the trailer of The Comey Rule.
So we are now 15 days before a presidential election, and we have to go through 347,000 emails to determine if one of the candidates in that election needs to be indicted.
Russia. We think they're trying to sabotage Secretary Clinton's campaign.
How?
Never spend much time on Facebook.
Hours to go before the polls begin to close.
Wisconsin, you see the lead? This is a sweep.
Director Comey.
The networks have all called it for Trump.
No one has ever succeeded like I have.
This was not espionage. This was an attack.
You're gonna get clobbered, Jim.
Jim Comey. He's more famous than me. Really looking forward to working with you. Let's take a picture.
We've now been presented the dossier concerning Russia and its connection to Trump. Putin began cultivating Trump as an asset and helped in real estate deals, hundreds of millions in loans.
That constitutes a real threat to national security.
Would you like to come over for dinner tonight?
Just the two of us?
Nobody gets treated as unfairly as I do. It's disgraceful.
Sir?
I need loyalty. I expect loyalty.
The president just committed a crime in your presence.
Stop deciding what we do and don't need to know.
It's so crazy in there.
We're steaming towards an iceberg.
I want to know what you can do to lift this Russia cloud.
If we ever put anything above the truth, it's a bell that can never be unrung.
He's a bad guy. He's a dishonest guy.
You're being pulled into a conspiracy.
You fired Sally Yates.
Do you really not know how screwed you are?
You went there to put bad guys away, not to help them become president.
He thinks that being right will save him. It won't.
So Billy, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. Why? It's a very simple question. Why telling this story now?
The reason to tell a story now is because it's still happening now. Everything that our story is about, everything that is covered in the miniseries was the predicate for what we're now seeing happen in America, in American politics, and in American government and democracy more broadly. I can't think of any writer-director who's ever been given the privilege and the opportunity that I've been given to tell a story that is completely relevant because it is actually happening right in front of us. It was so important to us to be able to tell the story of 2016 before Americans got the chance to vote again in 2020.
And Jeff, at the time of the event, what was your take on Comey? Because it's a very ambivalent feeling that we were getting about him at the time.
You know, I don't really remember where I was. This was, I think it was a day or two after Grab Him by the Pussy. So that was still, you know, all over the news. I might have been one of the people that was going, what is this guy thinking? Which then, you know, years later when Billy came and said, I want you to play Jim Comey, and then I got into kind of researching and trying to figure out how to do it, that was what we decided to do, was we decided to show you what he was thinking, why he did what he did, what were the reasons. And maybe by watching the Comey Rule, you'll find out more of what Jim was up against. You may not agree with him, you may not like him, I don't care, but you'll at least have better information and a better idea of what Jim was up against and what he was thinking and why he did what he did. And that's a different story than what you might have been finding on Twitter back in October 2016.
I think Jeff summed it up. We're not trying to make you like James Comey. We're trying to put you in his shoes. I think the miniseries is at its most effective when it says, okay, be James Comey for 2 seconds. Here are the facts. Here's what you know. Here are the circumstances. Here are the problems. Here are the pressures. What would you do? And reasonable people can disagree about what James Comey did, but I don't think anybody will come away misunderstanding what his goal was. His goal was very pure. His goal was to protect the institution of the FBI. You know, one of the first things I ever said to Jeff the first night I met him was that despite all the politics of this series, this is really a love story between a man and an institution. And everything he did was in defense of that institution. And I think if that's your true north, people may disagree about what you did, but I don't think people will disagree about why you did it. And I think Jeff captured that in a really compelling, effective way.
The only thing I'd add would be that Billy and I said, let's show him what we're thinking, what Jim was thinking. I had one journalist say, I could read your mind. And I just said, touchdown, bingo, we did it. We did it, we did it, we did it. That's all we were trying to do, was show you his thought process, why he did what he did, how he thought his way through each and every one of these problems.
Would you say that it is a Capra-esque character? How to tackle this aspect of the character in such a cynical world that we live in today?
I never, ever talked to Jeff in adjectives. I never talked to him about happy or sad or angry. It's always, what does the character want and how is the character trying to get it? You know, one of the things that we mistake in America, I don't know if people do it in Europe, but in America we do. We think of things in terms of institutions. We think of the FBI as an institution. The FBI is not an institution. The FBI is a group of human beings who are stewards of an institution. And those people can either have good judgment or bad judgment, or good intentions or bad intentions, but they're just people. The post office is a very different place being run by Louis DeJoy than it is being run by someone who actually cares about the post office. It's not the building that makes the decisions, it's the people. And we wanted to show James Comey as a person. Who better to do that than Jeff Daniels?
Oh, well, Jeff, there's something that is really, really bizarre with you. Every time you play a character on TV, or most of the time you play a character on TV, it's a good guy put in an incredibly difficult situation, whether it's Will McAvoy in Newsroom or Looming Tower recently. How is that? How do you explain that?
I think everything I've done in my career stems from Dumb and Dumber. There was a guy, a good guy, not very smart, but he was constantly put in situations where he had to the good guy had to work himself out of it. Maybe that's it, you know? I mean, you're kind of, in Hollywood, you're kind of, you know, Billy knows this, you as an actor, they go, yeah, listen, we want you to do something that you did before, just do it for us. But that wasn't this. And I've always fought against that. That's why I did Godless and Dumb and Dumber, for God's sakes, but also Jim Comey. Billy came to me in New York and he said, I want you to play Jim Comey. And my first reaction was, me? Are you kidding? Because I didn't think I would look like him. And then I thought, I don't have a clue as to how to do him. And then I said, yes.
The reason why we wanted Jeff, and Jeff was always our first choice, we just at first didn't think we had a shot at him because the timing wasn't going to work out because he was doing To Kill a Mockingbird on stage. But the reason we wanted him was because A, he's a great actor. Cover your ears, Jeff. He's a great actor, so that's obviously the most important thing. But secondly, because Comey is such a controversial figure, and because people are so polarized about him, we felt it was really important that we have someone who brings instant credibility. You know, when Jeff talks, people believe him. And that was really important. If you're going to tell the story of James Comey, it helps a lot to have an actor who brings with him that kind of credibility. Jeff checked an awful lot of boxes for us. So I flew out to see him in To Kill a Mockingbird, and I went backstage and begged him to play the part. And significantly about Jeff, the very first question he asked me was, will the network give you enough money so that you can surround me with great actors? It was the very first thing he asked. He didn't ask, what will you pay me? He said, will you pay enough to get great actors around me? I want to be around. I said, you want to be around show horses who are also race horses. He said, that's right. And that's what we did.
There is something else, Jeff, that I find absolutely remarkable in your interpretation of the part is the posture that you give Comey. I mean, one shot of him, and we know that this guy will stand tall, whatever happens. Can you tell us about how you kept this posture through the entire show, through the entire 3.5 hours of the show?
Well, the basic thing is Jim's 6'8". He's as tall as a tree. And Billy allowed me to put in little 2-inch lifts in my shoes, which got me to 6'5", but it still wasn't as tall as Jim was. And so there was that. You're constantly trying to, I remember just be tall, feel tall. And when you do little things like that, other things happen because of it. That was kind of what I did. Also in the loyalty dinner, and again, this goes back to get me a great actor. When you got Brendan Gleeson throwing Trump at you, it's like being in the French Open or the U.S. Open tennis match. You're getting stuff thrown at you, and in that particular scene, it put Jim back up against the chair. What the words that Trump kept throwing at him. So, again, that's using the other actors to inform whatever it is you're doing. And I think that had partly to do with it, but that was about it. I mean, as far as the posture goes, he just tried to pretend you're 6'8".
Special mention about the loyalty dinner, if you don't mind. Here's what was happening the day we shot the loyalty dinner. First of all, we shot this miniseries in 51 days, which means on average, we were shooting 4 scenes a day. The only scene in the entire 2 nights that got its own shooting day was the loyalty dinner. It was 8.5 pages of dialogue. A couple significant things. One, it was James Comey's only day on the set, and he brought his 18-year-old daughter. 2, it was the first day that Jeff was going to be opposite Brendan. It was their first day working together. So,
no rehearsal, didn't run lines, met in the makeup trailer. How you doing? Yeah.
Right. So be Jeff Daniels for a second. You got to deal with 8.5 pages. You're getting your first day with Brendan, who is the bells and whistles part. Like, he's the guy that's going to have all of that attention and all of that juice. And James Comey's there watching with his 18-year-old daughter. That was the loyalty dinner. Oh, and I came up to him right before we started shooting and said, after the line, I need loyalty, all the side lights on the set are going to start going out. They're going to dim over the course of the next 5 minutes so that by the end, it's just you guys on an island with just an overhead light. Don't worry about it. Those were the things that we were with Jeff on that one day, and he crushed, absolutely crushed. And that's his stage personality. That's the part of him that says, oh, okay, this is going to be the toughest performance ever, watch. And then he went out and did it.
It's true, Mr. President, you can fire the FBI director at any time for any reason or for no reason at all, but I want to stay because I love the Bureau and I love my job and I believe I'm doing it well.
One thing I never had to think about in the Trump organization, because I did so much myself, you know, people think we were so big, but truth is I did everything. But now I have to rely on people. I have all these idiot advisors around who think they got me elected. You know who I actually listen to? TV people. Because they got to get ratings every day. White House advisor can guess wrong, still keep his job. Not the TV guys. A lot of smart people in that business.
Well, you can rely on me, sir, to tell you that
I need loyalty.
He and Brendan had this competition like athletes compete. Like, it wasn't whiny. It was, oh, you can do this? Okay, I can do that. And it was exactly what you want as a director.
Is there a line not to cross, Jeff? Maybe this question is more for you as an actor. Is there a line not to do too much because it's a real thing, because it's Trump? Are you always telling to yourself, maybe this is too much, maybe this is not too much? I mean, this is incredibly difficult.
No, that's up for Billy to decide whether what you're doing or what Brendan's doing is too little, too much. Not my job. My job is to act and react.
And I can tell you, there was never a moment in this series where I went up to any of my actors, but particularly Jeff and Brendan, and said, it's too much. Reel it back in. Never, not once. I think everybody knew that I was not looking for a big operatic, play it to the back row kind of performance. I don't hire those kinds of actors. And it just didn't, the set doesn't ever have that kind of energy. We were keeping it real, and that's where I think actors do their best work.
I believe, since we're talking about set, there's something that I really, really like in the show is how you use your set. I mean, the Oval Office, for example, there is a scene at the beginning with Obama, where the Oval Office is a place of freedom. Everybody's moving and everybody's talking and it's very wide. And then there's a scene with Brendan Gleeson where it's almost claustrophobic, if I may use this term. Could you comment on how you used the Oval Office and this scene in particular to say that the climate has changed?
Well, step one, if you want to be a director who's known for visual style, is hire a great cinematographer, which I did. His name is Elliot Davis, and he was outstanding and way ahead of me on a lot of levels. But the other thing is just understanding the fundamental role of the camera in storytelling. Camera is there to capture subtext. Camera is there to capture everything that the actors are not saying. And we were trying to make a very specific comment about what the White House felt like when Obama was president versus what the White House feels like when Trump is president. You know, there's this moment where Comey comes out of a meeting with the president, and he's about to go talk to Reince Priebus and Jeff Sessions. And in the background, we had an extra come in and almost fumble the files that she's holding in her hands. And just this very subtle message about what the Trump White House is like. And that's what the camera's for.
How do you explain that international and American audiences are so fascinated by the White House and politics in television, American politics in television?
People are definitely attracted to power. They like seeing what happens behind the scenes. That was one of the big goals of the series. Everybody knows what they saw on CNN or Fox or MSNBC or Sinclair Radio or whatever, wherever you get your news from, Twitter, Facebook. We were going to go inside those rooms. We were going to take you inside the FBI, take you inside the White House. We were going to show you where those decisions were made and what the pressures were that impacted those decisions. I think that's why the thing feels as compelling and as powerful as it does. And that's a grandiose thing to say, so forgive me. But the idea was to tell the story that people didn't get to see.
I think Shakespeare did the same thing. You know, he wrote about kings and all that stuff, and that's because there's an audience for it. And I agree with what Billy said, that we want to get behind the scenes, behind the curtain.
What is the point of political television?
I don't think we've made political television. I think we've made a dramatic interpretation of events as we uncovered them. I can tell you what my purpose was. My purpose was to tell a story about how heartbreaking it can be to be a public servant. Just about everybody in this series is a public servant. And they really care about values and about the bedrock of American democracy and defending those things. And they have run into a human buzzsaw. And how do they keep their integrity? How do they keep their cool? How do they keep their wits? How do they keep making decisions? That can be a really heartbreaking experience. And it was for everybody in the story that we're telling. I wanted to use the power of American television to bring that to light.
I don't view it politically. I view it as information. The Comey Rule will at least give people more information as part of a national conversation leading into this election. Hopefully they'll have more information before this election than they did the last.
What do you want people to get from what they're going to see, what the stories that they will see unfold? Could it guide their choices?
The only thing that I would say to that is what I got from watching it, which is, oh my God, it was just the beginning. We had no idea. And even as it ends, the Comey Rule ends, you realize it's just beginning. And then 3 years later, 3 years have gone by, and here we are now.
My hope is that people have a deeper understanding of what happened in 2016, what the Russians did to infiltrate and influence our election. This is not a matter of conjecture. This is a matter of fact. The Russians did it. They are trying to do it again. This time they have cooperation from the White House, which makes it a bigger challenge. But if Americans are informed, I trust Americans to do the right thing. I don't presume to tell them how to vote, but I do presume that if they know what happened in 2016, they will take a slightly harder look at what is happening around them in 2020.
Democracy is hard, fragile, it's difficult to maintain and sustain. Authoritarianism is easy. And that's what's at stake leading up to this election. And my hope is that the Comey Rule will, as Billy says, help people take a harder look at what's at stake here, and that they put down their phones and they actually get involved, and that they take a stand for, in my case, for democracy. We'll see. My hope is that they will. My hope.
Comey, James Comey, both of you, the question is, the first time you show him the show, what's the feeling in your mind and how did he react? What did he tell you?
I was told he cried 3 times. I was told he watched it with his family, and that was very moving to him because he realized he could see what he had put them through. They apparently had done a pretty good job of keeping it in and supporting him during the actual time it occurred. But to see them watch the show and to be as emotional as Jim was, reminded him of what the family had gone through. And that was tough. That was tough on Jim and the family.
I think Jeff said it all. Not a lot to add there.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you one question. What was in your mind when you were showing the show to Mr. Comey?
I've made a lot of true stories before, and I pride myself on holding on to the faith of the people that I made the movies about. I don't think anybody that I've ever made a movie about has felt that I cheap-shotted them in any way or took advantage of them or manipulated or editorialized. And so that reputation is always on the line when you show a movie to someone who's a true character. But I think exponentially true in this case, just because he's so well known and the subject matter is so charged and so relevant. I mean, again, it's happening right now. James Comey is still, you know, an absolute lightning rod in American politics. To hear that he learned things watching the series, that was enormously gratifying for me. That told me that Jeff and I together had found a certain alchemy that was going to last. That meant a lot.
I'm wondering, how is the show taken in Washington, in DC, and did people already saw part of the show? Are you getting some reaction already? Is the political world of American politics is reacting to the show already?
The reactions that I've seen have been fairly extraordinary, from sort of across the political spectrum. I can't go as far as to say Breitbart is a fan, because Breitbart trashed us without having seen it, as did Fox News, or at least Laura Ingraham trashed it without.
What a surprise!
That was not terribly surprising. But other than those two extreme examples, we've shown it to quite a number of people in DC. We've shown it to some elected officials. We've shown it to people who were senior advisors to the Hillary campaign. We've shown it to all kinds of people. And the reaction that we're getting across the board is people find it really compelling. They find it harrowing. They find it oddly hopeful, which makes me happy. But they think we got it right. They think we got the rhythms of DC right, that we got the truth of how people in the FBI and the DOJ and the White House actually talk, how they behave. That was very, very gratifying for me.
Gentlemen, merci beaucoup for this panel. This was absolutely great. Thank you so much. Merci à tous et à toutes d'avoir suivi cette séance sur CANNESERIES live. Et n'oubliez pas que vous pouvez également retrouver sur la plateforme chaque jour de nouveaux rendez-vous, de nouvelles séries. Le festival continue. Bon festival. À bientôt. The Comey Rule, ce sera sur Canal+, le 29 octobre. Merci infiniment. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And let's all watch The Comey Rule. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.